Hey, it's Jeremy from jeremy.net. I am a comic book artist, writer, self-publisher. I share my creative process here, live with you online. If you'd like to support this channel, if you find these videos interesting, entertaining, informative, you can support this channel on Patreon at patreon.com/GERIMI. You also get bonus videos, bonus live streams once a month, additional behind the scenes blog posts, and additional to my creative process. I, oh, hang on. Oh, I see what I'm doing here. Sorry about that. I am still getting used to streaming from my desktop, and I realized the preview that I had set up was still playing audio, so it was doubling up on playing twice. All right, anyway, as I was saying, you can also see posts of my webcomic version of my comic Morningstar, which is Lucifer's Fall from Heaven, told as a Western. If you would like to read pages of my comic, you can also read them for free at my news page. That's news.jeremy.net. That's news.gerimi.net. And if you'd like to purchase physical copies of my comics, you can go to amazon.jeremy.net. That will forward you to my Amazon author page. So I'm also using a new headset. So if you guys are in the chat, let me know whether the audio is working okay. Let me know whether you can hear me clearly or not, whether it's too loud, too quiet, what have you. But yeah, so let us get started. Since last we spoke, I've made some progress on my the cover to the final issue of my comic Morningstar. So what I've been doing is painting digitally, and it looks like I've got a little weird. For some reason, it doesn't leave my I'm using Affinity Photo to work on my comic, and I've got each time I seem to set up my workspace, it doesn't maintain those workspace settings, which is kind of one of the things I'm not in love with about this software. For the most part, even though it was bumpy going when I first started, it seems to have I've gotten a little bit more used to it. Sometimes you just need to take time to work with the interface, um, try and get it all situated. And I wasn't necessarily happy with it. Oh, I see folks in the chat already. Hey, I see Ray of Hope. He says everything's all clear. Ask Lubris said, "Hello, fellow black man. Good to talk to you, brother. Thanks for dropping in." Um, yeah. So Affinity Photo. At first, I was super excited to have a non-subscription Photoshop competitor. It's got a lot of the features that Photoshop has. And I was very excited with it. Once I started using it, I was a little bit frustrated by the fact that not all of a lot of the features on here, I'm just not used to them working the way that I'm used to them working in Photoshop. And that's been a little bit frustrating and irritating. But now I'm starting to get used to simply just figuring out what I need, how I need to get it to work. The things that don't work like Photoshop, I've gone in and I'll just change the keystrokes so that they'll work like Photoshop key shortcuts and keystrokes, so I can just make it easier for me to work. And then the things where it does not work at all like Photoshop, I have to just figure out, well, how do I do what I need to do in this program? So you can see here's my original rough sketch that I was starting to work from, and I'm going to be periodically turning this on and off as I go through, because basically at this point I've worked out my light, my color scheme. As you can see here to the right, I've got a few different images opened up for just reference. Different people on fire. I did a Google search for for stuntmen on fire because that really gave me what I think I was looking for in this. Like, I just wanted to have this sense of Lucifer being engulfed in flames. And from there, I'm just at this point now that I've sort of blocked in the major areas, I think I might want to put in a little bit more white hot flames around the arms, around the bottom of the oh no, even around yeah, maybe around the bottom of the outside of the wings a little bit, just more of him feeling engulfed. But then after that, it's just a matter of me painting in the details that are in the pencils, just painting those in digitally. Like I said, I don't really come. I even though I've done traditional acrylic painting and I have done some digital painting, I don't consider myself a digital painter. I'm someone who draws and then colors their artwork in Photoshop. But I've made an attempt with the last issue to move away from line art for the covers, and for the covers to actually really try and make it feel more like a painting than a drawing. Even though when I paint, it really I was even as far back as art school, I was told by my instructors that I wasn't so much a painter as somebody who could draw in color. So I just had a sip of coffee there. I apologize also because this is a new microphone and this is my first time using it. I have no idea whether it's going to pick up a lot of strange mouth sounds, sounds of me swallowing, or if the breathing is too much, like you sounds like I'm breathing in your ear really hard. It's little things like that that may not seem like a big deal, but I know that from listening to a lot of podcasts that can get really irritating. So if you find little things like that going on in the audio, let me know. I'm not sure what I'll be able to do to fix them, but at least if I know they're there, I can try and start like researching for answers. But if you guys just simply are like, "Wow, we can hear you really clear. It sounds better than it ever did before," then you could just chalk that up to I've got a new microphone and I'm not using Wi-Fi to stream anymore, which is funny because for the longest time when I was having trouble with my streaming, that was a big problem was just it being choppy. And one of the number one rules I should have known or I should have remembered that people say like always make sure you're plugged into a hardwired into your internet connection using an Ethernet as opposed to doing it off of Wi-Fi like I had been. I know these things, and yet I was still doing it in the quote unquote wrong way. I'm trying to figure out what happened because I was even working last night, and between last night and now, the panel setup was different than I had before. In fact, this is so weird. Even my that's another thing that I don't like is that Affinity does not maintain whatever settings I had for the tools beforehand. Like I was using the magic wand tool with my tolerance set to 0 and contiguous turned off. What that means is if I select an area, I've got like a layer of flats at the very bottom, and I just leave my flats locked, and then I just scroll down, select what I need to select, and turn on. Now, when I selected this area underneath the wing, my goal is to select the entire silhouette of the figure, or the area all the way around him. But I just clicked on this one area down here, and it only selected that. If I click again, now that contiguous is turned off, it selects the entire, all of the area that's a silhouette. This is what I originally wanted. And what I don't understand about Affinity is that I don't think I even closed Affinity. I think I had this file open and ready to go before I went to bed last night so that I could just dive in and start working. But but for some reason it reset my magic wand to change the tolerance and put it back on contiguous. And I see American Swordfish is in the chat. Hey, how you doing? He said, I almost greet you in Spanish. My brain shut down for a minute, for a moment. Well, you know what? Hey, the internet is an international place. All languages welcome. I am not a native Spanish speaker. I would not say that I even speak conversational Spanish, but I've taken enough Spanish in school that I can order food, go to restaurants, get a hotel. In fact, I was traveling in Paris a few years back, and I was talking to this nice Parisian couple. They were some musicians, and I met them in a bar, and we were just talking about life and being creative. And I have no French whatsoever, so I don't have any French. Their English is definitely better than my Spanish, but they still didn't really speak enough English to be conversational. However, they spoke Spanish. I speak a little bit of Spanish. That was the only common language we had. So an American and a Parisian sitting at a bar in Paris, having conversations about art and creativity in Spanish. That was the only that was the only common tongue we could find. So yeah, but it's just my personal opinion. But I do think that Americans, myself included, are not that good at being better educated in terms of language because we really, you know, don't interact with other nations as much, like on a one-to-one basis, talking to people from all over the world as we should. I think, it'd be good for us as people just to be able to converse with people in their tongue as opposed to assuming everyone speaks English because, you know, a lot of people do because they do a lot of business with Americans, but I wish that I had studied more languages or at least had a better grasp of Spanish and French when I was in school. I see Mark Rains in the chat. What's up, man? Thanks for joining us. All right, I guess I should actually start drawing or painting as opposed to flapping my gums. Um, Part of me flapping my gums is me trying to figure out where I left off and what I wanted. And originally, thought I was going to paint a little bit more over the edge of the wings, but I think that I am happy with that, with the level of detail and paint that's on there. I think what I want to do is maybe select just the wings and then come in here, go back up to my layer. Is there another layer of high white light colors? Ooh, no, that was something for when I was originally sketching, just sort of loosely working in the page. That isn't something I want to use. Let's go down here to these layers. What's this one? Is this the same layer? But yeah, that's kind of the same thing. That's exactly the same thing. In fact, I'm tempted to just delete that layer because I really don't need it. It's another copy of the line art. All right. Okay, see, so I've got a little bit of flame. I've got levels of yellow flame for the background. I've got levels of white flame for the white hot areas. And I don't really need to have these on so many separate layers. It's more of the fact that I'm just giving myself, I guess I'm giving myself room to make mistakes. I'm giving myself room to mess up, which I think is good for artists. You kind of got to give yourself room when you're going to try stuff to say, all right, there's space, give yourself space to fail, to fall flat on your face. So let's see here. It's another odd thing is it's not really telling me which brush I have selected. And the brushes are not as intuitive as, say, Photoshop brushes. But really all I want is just to give the sense, just a little bit more white on top of the yellow on this wing behind his shoulder to really give you that sense that he is being engulfed and consumed by the flames. I mean, it's super light touch here, just little spots of white and flame. And I think I may come in and paint a little bit more. No, I'm tempted to paint a little bit more white on top of the arm here, but I think instead I'm probably just going to go in there with color and paint in sort of the folds. So this will be an interesting exercise because really at this point it's just going to be me drawing folds and wrinkles and drapery, just painting them digitally and lighting them with an extreme light source, being lit from all sides. And really it's just the core that is going to be, I think that's a bit too much. Let me just undo a little bit of that. And really it's just going to be the core where there's actually going to be detail. And this is just going to be so highlight lit on the top. Mark Rain mentions that Photoshop Creative Cloud 2019 is free on the web. Wow, I did not know that. That is probably worth checking out and using. I suppose for the most part, when people work on a you got me. He had it at the end. He's all just not legal though. I at a certain point I went legal with my software. I think because I think when a lot of designers start using programs like Photoshop, they probably have somebody who just passes them off a copy, or there used to be cracked copies, floating around the internet. And I made it a point that as soon as I was able to afford it, to get legal and stay legal. And I think I bought my first Adobe Creative Suite when it was before the Creative Cloud. It was when they went from just numbering it like Photoshop 8, Photoshop 9, when they went to CS, when they started naming it Creative Suite. And so I believe the first version of Photoshop I purchased was CS2, and I used that for several years until they got to CS5, and then I upgraded to CS5, and I'd been using that up until just this past year. And while I still have CS5 on my desktop computer, CS will not run on my laptop. I guess it's just not compatible with the processor on the new laptop I bought because my old one died. And given that I needed something to run, I had to decide: do I want to upgrade to the Creative Cloud, or do I want to look at some other options? And I've tried Clip Studio Paint, and to be honest, I'm giving Affinity a lot more of a shot than I gave Clip Studio Paint. So it's still worth it for me to even consider going back and trying that. But Affinity just feels like a more it is a well-rounded digital editing, digital painting program. It really is like Photoshop for the most part. Um, I mean, I've looked at GIMP, and in comparison, this definitely feels like it has more of the features that I need. Now, see, this is another thing that I'm still not used to, is when I'm using the magic wand. Normally, you would just, you know, press Option. I can't remember whether it was Option or Shift, but when you want to add to a wanded selection, you just press a modifier and you can add to it. But in this, I actually have to go up here and switch to Add, and then I can add to my selection. And for some reason, I mean, yeah, the tolerance is set to 0, but it seems like the flats are not selecting completely here. There's a little bit of extra left inside, so I just got to go in there and now see. Here we go again. Problematic is that I have to switch to the Add button in order to go in here and add with, I think they call it a magnetic selection tool, but it's just the polygon selection tool. But in order to add that, select that in flats, it's another thing where I have to go in, instead of just holding down Option to add to the selection. And mind you, I'm on a Mac. I know it's different for PC, and I pardon me for being so Mac centric. I know a lot of you are probably using Photoshop, or if you are using Affinity, you're using it on a PC. But it's too hard for me to keep that in my brain while painting to remember to translate all of the modifiers. But I'm used to just adding a modifier and then being able to select, as opposed to having to go up here and switch to the mode button in here. And there may actually be a shortcut for changing modes in the selection tool without having to actually go up to the menu bar and change it. But that's research that I will have to do on my own. I don't want to do that research here in front of you guys because that's a waste of your time. And guess who's in the chat? I see my boy Ian Rocks is there. He said, I keep forgetting to say hi. I'm here. Welcome, welcome. Thanks for joining. All right. So this is something that I was debating on this piece, is whether I want to, let me turn my line art off again. And that's another thing, just the fact that I'm used to, in Affinity Photo, off to the right-hand side, there's, instead of having the little eyeball icons to turn on layers on and off, they just have a checkbox for layer visibility. And it's just a little frustrating having to remember that because I'm used to checking here on the left side, but it's on the right side. Another little problem that it has. Oh, Iron Rock says says A12 Bionic all here, all day every day. Amaris is in the chat. I hope you're feeling better. I know you had to go. I think it was to the emergency room last week or the week before. Well, I hope that you are feeling well and somewhat healthier, and whatever was ailing you, you're on the mend. So one of the things that I was debating was either masking out or painting out some of the flames, or whether I just wanted to paint a new layer on top. So I think that I'm going to start with painting a new layer on top. So we'll just call this a gun layer. And another thing is it doesn't ask me what I want to name the layer right when I open it. And some people don't really care about naming their layers, but I tend to have so many layers that I'm obsessive about naming my layers when I work. Let me call this gun flame first before I continue flapping my gums. Um, in fact, let's call it Gunflame Base instead of Gunflame Yellow, because I get the feeling I may paint some orange as the base color and then paint yellow on top of that. But this is from working as a graphic designer for many years. I My first professional job, even though I was working as an illustrator, I was working as an illustrator at a design studio that was developing their own intellectual property. Shout out to my all my EMA multimedia vets out there. I don't know if if there's any of them watching, but it was my first job, professional job, and it was a great environment to be brought into because it taught me a lot of great design habits. Most importantly, the naming of layers, because you never know what when you're going to have to hand a file off to another designer. You never know, and you want to name your layers as clearly. Whoops, I forgot that I had the belt selected also. So let's go back to the to this tool and let me just deselect that and let's keep it with just the gun. Um, you never know when you're gonna have to hand a file off to other designers. You want them to be able, if someone else has to open your files and look at your work, you want them to be able to piece together what the hell's going on, what you don't want someone to have to go through and click on every single object or turn layers on and off to have to figure out what the hell is going on in their file and figure so they can know where to start with. So they really ingrained in my very first design job the habit of making sure I name all of my layers. And it's made things easier for me in that when I'm designing or painting or what have you, I don't really have to keep clicking around and clicking on stuff or forget, well, wait, this object's behind that layer or what's what. I can just scroll down through a long list and I fairly quickly can figure out what I want. Um, you can group layers here, much like you create layer sets in Photoshop. Oops, no, I don't want that brush. See, that's the thing. There's getting used to using the eyedropper because the eyedropper didn't have a keystroke set to it originally. So this is one of those cases where both the eyedropper and with the both with the eyedropper and the magic wand, I had to go in and create settings that were similar to what I wanted and was used to in Photoshop. I see that Amaris, it was food poisoning that sent her to the hospital last week. That sucks. I've only had food poisoning, I think, once before, but it was like the most god awful, wretched experience I've ever had before. And I know, my wife has experienced it multiple times. I've got a lot of friends that have gone through it. It sucks. So Sorry you had to go through that, but I'm glad you're feeling better. I see the Art of Read is in the chat. Hey, hey, how's it going? Working on the cover to the final issue of Morning Star. So I mean, at this point, you guys pretty much have a pretty good sense of how this is going to come out. A lot of the beginning was just me painting through to figure out the lighting, and I didn't really intend at first to go. I have heard from other people who teach digital painting online that the method of painting value first, like an entire black and white piece, and then going and coloring it later, you end up with pieces that are a little bit dull. You don't make as interesting of color choices. But I still feel like for me, it's more about I personally need to get better at my values because if you have a really good sense of value, then you can paint in color without worrying about it. Um, I am one of those people who all the things that I can do that people say, oh, you do that well. It's like I can do it, but it's because I had to work hard at it. So I can do, I can create a piece with a good sense of value, but I have to work at it, meaning I have to do value studies and paint the whole thing in black and white first. And I hope at some point to reach the level where it doesn't matter. I can go and just paint completely in color without working out my values first. Well, you know what though? What I was about to say may mean that I'm talking out of my ass here because this piece I went in and I started with doing black and white values and painting all of that first, and just to get a sense of where I was going. When I realized that the way I was coloring it, there was a lot more white surrounding, like this nice halo of white that's around the figure. The way I at first started comping this in, it's almost like the whole background was white and there was almost no other color in it. And I thought, well, wait, that doesn't really work. And then when I looked at my photo reference and realized if I really want, I can have like it keyed with. I think that the bottom thumbnail on the left, the bottom piece of reference, where I saw that this yellowy orange background, and then the figure really you can see its core colors and its core shadows, the darkest area, are obviously farthest away from the flames towards the center of the figure, but then being surrounded basically in a halo of white. Between these two at the bottom, these are the ones that made me realize, oh wait, I was approaching it wrong, where I was using too much white. But also the fact that my original sketches, it was mostly like a lot of yellow and white, and I realized, wait, I really need to have that white core right around them, and then let the yellow and oranges drop off around them. In the process of specking that out, I went from what I was originally doing, which was a value study painting, to moving on to, oh, I also see in the chat, Keeman Monet Arts. Hey, I think you're a new watcher, new viewer. Thank you for joining. Thanks for stopping by. I hope you enjoy. Yeah, so I originally intended to do a full gray value study and then come back and do color. But in terms of like as I was working out that I wanted the color scheme to be similar to these two pieces of reference towards the bottom, I kind of painted out, well, what would this look like if I did that? And in painting that, I just sort of kept following it and following it. And I did end up with what we've got here, where instead of doing a full value study like I originally intended, I've got this piece that for the most part, I'm just painting digitally. So there is hope for me yet. So I still don't want to go back. I try as I'm going through this to turn my pencil layer on and off just to kind of check. But one of the things that I figured out as I was blocking this piece in is that, for instance, the details here that are on the abs and the details that are so far that I started painting into the his kerchief around his neck, that I really stepped back from that because I realized what makes the most sense is for me to paint soft airbrushy tones, like the way you see on the hat, the overall tones around the outside of the wings, and how it's softer here in the jacket, to kind of paint those soft tones in first, and then really just come in and use a harder brush to paint all of the details. I started softening up the folds in the kerchief, softening up these values that I painted into the pants and the belt, and then just go in with a harder brush to paint in all these details on the edge. Um, Keyman says, I remember you from being a recent guest on the Artcasters live stream. Well, you know what? Thanks for following me over from that. I love the Artcaster guys. I'm not sure when I'm going to have them on because I still haven't signed up for StreamYard yet, but I've been meaning to ask both of them to come out into my chat because they've been kind enough to have me on more than once, and they're great guys. So I want to have them here as a guest, and hopefully some of the people that are in my chat, if you guys haven't interacted with the Artcasters before or checked out their live stream, you should go check them out and listen to their shows. It's Scott Circlin and Joshua Kimball on YouTube, but also hopefully bring them over to my house, invite them over, and let you guys talk to them here on this channel. So, and I see Amar's in the chat. Thanks for popping in. He said back on the computer today, huh? Yeah. I'm trying to alternate because right now the two things that I have on my plate are finishing this cover, and then I have to do the lettering for all of the final issue, because I always letter before I start doing my layouts, so I can actually draw around my lettering and my dialogue. So since both of those are computer centric tasks, I figure what I'll do is I'll alternate between doing the lettering and I mean not lettering, but I'll alternate between either. Hang on, let me make this brush a little bit smaller. I'll alternate between either doing figure drawing, where I'm kind of showing my corrections and continuing to work on my figure drawings, and I'll do those for my desktop. And then the rest of the time, I'll be either on my computer working on this cover, or when the cover's done, do the lettering, and that'll be until I'm ready to start with the actual layouts. Keyman says, pretty cool. Thank you. Yeah, right now, I'm trying not to get too much into painting detail. What I want to do is create a sense of lost edges. I kind of want parts of the character's hand to feel like they're actually disappearing into the flames. So when I come in here and I start painting the details of like the knuckles, the fingers, and all that, some of it I will paint in there, and some of it is going to be like the flames almost obliterate some of that detail, like it's just swallowing his hand up. So there's places here I want to paint just enough white into it that it feels like the hand is disappearing into the fire that's behind him and around him. In fact, I think I should probably go back in here and paint a little bit more yellow at the top of the gun barrel, just so that the gun feels like it's disappearing into the background. Not because this whole thing is I want the gun to be emerging out of flames, like his wrist, his arm is on fire. But I want just a little bit, like it feels like the flames really are wrapping around this weapon. And I'm probably going to paint more, like what I'll probably do is go in, paint whatever gun details. I'm not going to make the gun super detailed. I don't think that my pencils themselves are really even that detailed. Is my pencils are pretty rough, but just painting in probably the shadow planes, probably things that will have like a dark brown core to it, and then a little bit of line detail, and then enough to delineate the different planes of the gun and the finger. And then what I'll probably do is put another layer of white and yellow on top, and have the areas where it feels like underneath the line art, this is an area where the white is kind of creeping over into the hand, kind of down here in the knuckles, and then the yellow up here on the top. And what I'll probably do is paint a little bit more color creeping on top of the detail, so you really feel like the flames are swirling around the gun and around his arm and his hand. And the thing I've also found is a lot of times whenever I start any piece, I bet all of you can empathize with this, is that sense of I have no idea what I'm doing. I mean, it's kind of like a painter's imposter syndrome, where anytime you start making any piece, you feel like you're a fraud. All the things that you feel like you may have known, or any good piece you did before, was a stroke of luck, or it's an accident, and today's the day where you can't paint at all. And that's because when you're starting any given painting, you feel like you're starting from scratch, or at least I do. And I think that what helps for me personally is giving myself the time and the space to feel like I'm going to fail, to just let myself mess up, to let myself have to find my way through the piece. Like early comps, I may have deleted the layer that had my early comps for this piece. I don't necessarily want to go in here and turn all of them on and off again and on again and off again. Actually, you know what? Let me see here. If I turn off all of comp 2, the other thing I need to figure out is if there's a way for me to have floating windows while still having this separate window. Like I want to have floating windows but still have the whole screen covered in the background. A little bit of interface stuff I still need to figure out with this program. But let's see here. Oh, this is just from when I was just trying to work out just values and painting black and white. But yeah, originally I painted it like there was a lot more gray underneath. I mean, this is really just my basic flats, and then I started basically painting over that. And at this point, I think my color values were pretty far off. Let's see here. Is there a hue saturation layer? I think I did have another layer that had some coloring on top of it that I ended up turning off. But then I eventually just started fresh with the whole thing and tried starting with working from that orange background to yellow, and then slowly painting hotter and hotter on top of him until I added the white flames that you see that really create that sense of him being engulfed in flame, and then keeping the ones that are on the background separate from the ones that are on the figure, separate from the ones that are around the gun. And that's more of the paranoia of digital painting, being afraid that I'm going to mess up. So keeping those separate just so I can come in and adjust, repaint, change as needed. And as always, I realized I've been painting for a little while and didn't hit save. Normally, that's like just a trigger mechanism. Like my hand normally has been trained such that anytime I'm using any digital program, if I go longer than 5 minutes, like I get an itch. That's my brain telling me, oh, time to hit save. Save often. Remember that. I mean, if you're working on a 500 meg file, that can be a pain in the ass because it may take you like 2 or 3 minutes to save, and then you're like, in the time that it takes you more time to save, then you don't want to hit it every 5 minutes. But then if you go like 20 minutes and then it crashes, you've lost. Well, let's say you go a half hour and then it crashes. You don't want to go a half hour without hitting save because then you've lost a half hour's worth of work. So the bigger the file, ironically, the longer I may go between saves, but it's always a working balance. Usually I try to work, with stuff where it's not so massive, or if I need to, I may flatten or merge certain layers or save a copy of the layered file and then just open up a merged version. Keep painting on top of that. Apologies if you're picking up any of the mouth sounds. I just had a little sip of coffee, keep me going here. So I guess the next step is now I really do need to move on to details. And I have to decide whether I want to start with the cloth or whether I want to start with the wings. And there we go. Figure highlights. Got to turn that back on. Oddly enough, this is one of the things maybe I don't need to turn this back on because this is because there's highlights in the hair that I want to keep. But it does feel kind of like I want to paint on top of all of that, get rid of some of it. I guess I got to just decide, do I want to jump into the wings and start cleaning those up or not? That also means a tough question for me is canvas rotation, because I am used to just rotating the canvas in Photoshop. Keeman says, I normally go 10 to 15 minutes when I save my process of work. That's a pretty good rule of thumb. Anywhere 10 to 15 minutes, usually pretty safe. Because, I mean, that's the amount that if for some reason it crashed, you wouldn't feel horrible about losing it. But it's frequent enough that, like, you can just kind of keep moving along, moving along, moving along. And I know for me, I have sometimes been working on a file and it's a big file, and I intentionally am like, all right, 20 minutes is as long as I can stretch this, and I will hit save, and it'll be saving. And I'll watch. This is more in Illustrator than in Photoshop, which again, Illustrator is a whole other ball of wax. But that save bar will be going halfway through, and then it'll crash, and I'm looking at Illustrator like, really, really, you waited till I got this far along, and then you crashed. So it's sometimes Illustrator just has it out for you. I see Clay is in the chat. How you doing, Clay? Just in here doing some digital painting. Hope you're having a good weekend, man. Let's see here. Clay is my nephew there. So I guess the thing that I'm sort of dilly-dallying about is I haven't checked. Oh, okay. Because I don't want to rotate the canvas. I don't want to flip the canvas. I want to. This is something that actually bothers me about Affinity, and I haven't had a chance to look at it yet and properly figure out how to do it. I'm certain that there is a way to flip the canvas in increments. I am used to Photoshop where you can simply rotate the whole canvas with just a rotation tool, and you just rotate it freehand, paint it at whatever angle you want. Basically, the digital equivalent of rotating the paper while you're drawing. And I don't seem to recall how to do that in Affinity Photo. And I'm not going to take the time to look it up now because you guys are here hanging out, and me looking up those kind of things does not make for great great YouTubing. But let me see if I can get a brighter orange here. But in a perfect world, I would be able to rotate the canvas like that so that I could just paint the wings in in an easier manner. I think at this point, my reference is still there. I can still get it if I need it, but I want to get a little bit more screen space and get in here. Again, trying to decide whether I want a new layer or whether oh, see, that's another thing that bothers me about this program is how touchy the masking is. That you can just by sliding one layer underneath another a little bit, you'll make it'll treat the layer below as a mask, which I don't want it to do. I just want to select it, but it's very, very touchy, and that makes for difficult painting. All right, and I just wanted to look and see if I can find the layers that have the. All right. So at this point, I guess I'm just getting here. Switch to a harder brush. Some test marks. Well, that doesn't seem to be doing anything. Do I have something selected right now? Ah, that's why it didn't do anything. I've still got the gun selected. That's another thing. With a magic wand, whenever you move to a new area, it deselects and it starts showing you your selections all over again. With this, if you hide your selections, they stay hidden. And it doesn't matter if you deselect and select something else, that new selection, it's selected, you just can't see it. And I actually really appreciate the fact of it starting you over each time you move to a new area so that you can basically just keep you from painting on the wrong layer or painting in the wrong area. Or keep you from sitting there like a jackass saying, why aren't my paintings showing up? So let me make sure I don't have anything selected. Because right now the brush is not doing anything. Yeah, right now it should be showing a selection, and I'm using the brush and picking a layer on normal, and it does not seem to be doing anything, which is odd. Very odd. Let's see what happens if I create a new layer. Nada. So now it is showing me as though I have painted on an area. See, this is what I find irritating and frustrating. Is just for what apparently is no reason, it is not letting me. Okay, for some reason it's acting as if this area is still selected, but I'm telling it to show me if there's any selections. All right, there we go. I think that I just had it selected and for some reason it still wasn't showing me it. Like I said, this program is a really good value if you don't want to spend the money on on Photoshop or the Creative Cloud. because I think it might be $100 for a one-time purchase, and I got it on sale for 50. So I ended up spending $50 on this, and then $50 on Affinity Designer, which is their Illustrator competitor. All right, let's go a little bit bigger, just so I can get a nice thick to thin. So this is what happens when you're painting digitally. Is you'll just make the same stroke like over and over and over again, saying, "Nope, that's not it. Nope, that's not it. Nope, that's not it." Um, or I could actually just paint out the areas on here that I don't want. Paint the background color on top of it. I see Amar mentions I created custom feather brush for wings in a Clip Studio. That is a good idea. It's still there's a lot in terms of creating custom brushes that I need to get the hang of with this program. It took me a while just to get it to make a simple to make just a simple airbrush and like a soft brush tool versus a hard brush tool that's more like a pencil line, and then one that's sort of in between to give me a nice ink line. I think the main thing here is me trying to keep a sense of volume, trying to keep a sense of like these lighter parts being that I'm going to paint. I mean, these darker lines, these darker strokes I'm making, that I'm going to paint lighter strokes on top of them. And this is really more me trying to set a base that's slightly different than the base that I currently laid out underneath here. More like that. And I'm trying to decide whether I want to completely paint these out or just dull them down a little bit as you get closer to the light areas. Amar says he used oh his feather brush. He said it creates pretty good feathers for wings. I used it for my Lilith character's wings. It's on my Instagram. It's really easy to make them in Clip Studio Paint, just like Photoshop, but the ones in Clip Studio have way more control. Well, like I said, I don't really feel like I gave Clip Studio a fair shake, only because I wanted more of the photo editing capabilities that Photoshop has. That said, I probably will come back to it at some point and mess with it some more. So knowing that there's more control of making the brushes is good to know. That's encouraging. So I look forward to it when I do dip in to Clip Studio further. Yeah. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to paint over these strokes that I just made. Or actually, I'm going to erase out some of them so that more of the light tone that's underneath comes through. And then I'm going to start painting in using some of those yellows and gold colors on top of these. So you knock these back a little bit and then give it just a little bit more detail. Maybe have some white painted on top of those to accent as highlights. But I think on this other side, you know what? Now I better go back to the flats and just select the wing, because on this side, I'm going to be putting detail in around the flame. You know, I'm going to have to put this below the white flames, because I realize now all of the white hot glow, I'm going to want that above what I'm painting right now. So let's call this detail base. Yeah, because the way that I'm trying to approach this is painting in vague shapes and details. And I mean, vague shapes and vague sense of forms and volumes, and painting those softly, and then reserving my harder edges. Like, yes, there's hard edges around the figure in terms of the silhouette, but then once I go through and get the basic volumes the way I have here, to go in and paint all the details with the hard edges, so that you get the general sense of the figure softly, and then the details will jump out at you just because of the contrast of them being hard edge versus soft edge. Uh, and Keeman also seconds Amar and says Clip Studio is way better to use than Photoshop. So yeah, Amar says for creating art, I 100% agree. So you know what? Maybe I gotta start doing some digital paintings with Clip Studio. Give it a better a better shot. Oops, see, that's what I'm talking about right there. All I did was tap on the layer. Whoops! All I did was tap on my flats layer, and it automatically masked it to the to my flats copy, which is a base. When what I really want is just to select my flats so that I can select the wings. And it's just so touchy. It's so touchy. And that bothers me. I mean, for some people, it might be really handy to see how responsive that thing is. For people who are constantly masking things left and right and want to be able to just touch mask, move it, and use layers to mask other layers and objects to mask other objects. Whereas I'm really treating this much more like it's just a device for me to paint, and having those layers is useful. Interesting. So I guess I didn't have this set to mask out that flame layer. So let me go back. I think I had oh yeah, there's a layer called flame flat. And what I want to do is select this and magic wand add. And let's just add this. Nope, that's completely separate. So I guess I had originally had a pattern worked out for the flames here, and I tossed that whole pattern for something more organic. And I think that let's just undo that selection and go back up here. And I think instead I'm just going to have to live with the fact that, oops, nope, undo again. I'm just going to have to live with the fact that, well, wait, where the hell did that detail layer go? See, this is what's weird, is stuff will just disappear. I can tell you that what happened was, oh, see, there you go. Instead of selecting the layer, it masked it. And it's not that I don't want the feature of being able to drag a layer underneath a layer to create a mask. It's that I just don't want it to be so goddamn sensitive. So we are at about an hour here. I don't know if you guys have any more questions for me. Again, this was pretty slow going, but at this point in the painting, it really is just patience. It's me just going through and making small selections, small choices, and just working my way through the piece to bring it in for a landing. So if you guys don't have any other questions or thoughts, then we can wrap it up for this week. Omar also says, if you have any questions, I can help as much as I can based on what I know, in terms of like getting the hang of Clip Studio Paint. That is good to know. And even though I'm going to probably finish this piece in Affinity, at some point I will dive in deeper and I will probably reach out and tap you for some knowledge. So I appreciate the offer, man. Thank you so much. Yeah, so I don't know if I'll be done with this by the time that we're on next week's live stream. And plus, next week I'm going to go back to figure drawing again, and I'm probably just going to do some figure drawing studies from my desktop, just doing the fixing bed figure drawings. So I definitely intend to be done with this um, by 2 weeks' time. So who knows? You may not see another process video of me working on this, but I'll be sure to at least post in the community page when the page is done. If I finish it and it's not during a stream, then I'll post it just so you guys can see how it came out. Well, on that note, let's see here. Thank you so much for stopping by, spending time with me while working on my digital painting here for the final issue of Morningstar. Again, if you would like behind the scenes bonus videos, an additional live stream once a month, additional behind the scenes blog posts, being able to read Morningstar online, you can go to patreon.com/GERIMI. That's my Patreon channel. There's free content on there as well. You don't have to be a Patreon subscriber to check it out. Usually I will post 2 posts a week that are public, and then I usually will post 2 more posts that are just for subscribers along with that bonus live stream. So if you want to support this YouTube channel, support my creative process and the artwork that I'm making, please go to my Patreon, at least check it out. If you feel like it, go ahead and subscribe for like $1 a month, $2 a month, whatever you feel like. If you would like to read preview pages of Morningstar, you can go to news.jeremy.net. That's the archive for my newsletters. You can see the pages that I post every month, along with additional blog posts. And if you would like to buy physical copies of my comics, or if you like to read them digitally on Amazon Kindle, you can go to amazon.jeremy.net. That'll forward you to my Amazon page. So, guys, thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate your time. I appreciate you hanging out with me. That's it for now. Go be creative.